Howdy all of you delicious people, I'm here today to review the Dresden Files, Season 1, Episodes 1 and 2. So I feel like you need to go on and read all the books to understand the show, or any other medium of which that this thing is in, to understand what the show is. Because not only is there an Episode 0 that isn't tied to the show, that I guess didn't legitimately air, and might have gone on and explained everything and explained everyone, and we'll never have known about that episode, so that sucks. But so, because there's a whole like description of what episode 0 was, and that wasn't the episode I started watching. So, episode 1, we go on to have to try and figure things out along the way, because we don't even know what any of these things are. The show has really no budget. I thought that Constantine had a small budget, but man, was that written well. Whereas this show has, honestly, like, it is hurting because of its budget. But not only that, it just doesn't have a good setup of much of anything. This show's setup is so weak to where I'm like, I don't know who anyone is, and they don't explain it well enough, and they should. How in the pilot episode they go on and toss out words like White Council and like, okay, who are those guys? Or who are those people? And so come to find out, the White Council is to be this organization of wizards who are to go on and kind of police any people that are going on and abusing their supernatural abilities or powers or whatever. And so I guess that's what White Council is, who... Sure. Thanks for explaining that, show. But not only that, like, I barely understood in the first pilot episode that we have some, like, changelings kind of going on here, where we have a bunch of dudes that eventually all go from looking like humans to looking like ravens. I'm like, how was I supposed to really know that? Because there's a special effect that looks so garbage that is to show this like winged man, and then it turns into like a man. And how was I supposed to know that was a transformation between a crow and a man? How was I supposed to figure that out? What a cheap effect. But not only that, it obviously just feels like this is just like this blatantly obvious budget. So, and they don't even give us enough time to help us know who characters are. Like Melissa is to be set up, I guess, as some medium character, like a character who is to go on and have this certain ability. And man, does she really have a long shelf life on this show to help us really understand who this person really was. But not only that, there is so many characters that just feel like they were like written off when they get into like dialogue. Just like, oh, okay, well, like me and Laura didn't work out, and like, okay, I guess you guys didn't. I guess she was too weirded out from that whole diner scene, right? But so, let's go on and let's just kind of tee it up for these 2 episodes. And try to go on and figure out what ended up really all happening in these episodes. Because this show was just straight up gangster awful. But I honestly just want to keep going to just see how it goes. See if they actually explain things or take whole entire episodes to give us backstory on characters where I'm like, who's Bob? How is all of a sudden Bob in this world? As if he's almost some, like, lazy Alfred character to Harry's Bruce Wayne, I guess, if we have to say that he's Bruce Wayne in the show. how did Bob come to be? He just, like, we just have so many plopping characters that I'm like, who are any of these people? Are we making assumptions that Harry was to previously be a actual detective with Murphy, and that's why they have such a good friendship? We have to assume. Nothing's explained here. But so let's go on into teeing it up. So for the first episode, we not only have to deal with Harry's questionable origin story, where he is to go on and get this shield bracelet, and that's all that matters really with his story of origin. And Harry is to go on and meet with a kid himself who is in fear or being afraid of a number of things coming after him, and we have to figure out why. We also have this detective, or Lieutenant Connie Murphy, who is to go on and have this very unusual case that she desperately needs to go to Dresden, who is Harry, for, to try and understand, like, okay, like, this is a very unusual case where all of a sudden this person is to have all the skin from off of their bones, and this makes no sense. So Murphy has to go on to eventually go to Harry to try to understand who could this possibly be. And then we go on and have a villain in this episode that isn't really defined all that well within the show, but we just have to naturally assume what their abilities are through the showcasing of them, because that's all we really got. So, within episode 2, we have this character called Boone, who is to kind of go on and be, like, having this episode be fairly similar to Child's Play in a lot of ways, where this guy is to go on and find this Egyptian tablet to then be able to somehow swap bodies with people. And Dresden is to have to go on and try to find the bouncing ball here of who the person is that this guy is to be inside of, and figure out a way to try to exercise or be able to figure out a way to get that Boone character out of the person who is inside, or whoever is to be the host of Boone last, let's just say. Kind of very much like the horror movie, the Wes Craven film Shocker. It's kind of similar to that. I went on and did a review of that movie. You can go on and check that all out and find out what that is about. But really, it's just a body swapping episode, as if we've already had technically certain body swapping like things throughout the first episode. They're just kind of going with the same similar idea. Okay. So, like, to me, this show feels very similar to this show called Haunted, that, of course, the lead character in that was, of course, also from, like, Party of Five and Lost. Haunted actually probably is one of those shows where it probably doesn't have much of a budget either, but it has good writing. And also, I'd probably go on and compare this show to probably Constantine, because Constantine didn't have a budget either, but the writing, I think, was solidly good to not even have you really realize that the movie, or that the show, I mean, Constantine, the show Constantine, had no money. That it figured out a way to write out that this show, Constantine, did not have money. So, with that said, let's just go on into the double 5-time territory. Let's just go into spoilers for this one. Let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time is about that time to spoil these episodes. So, this show is straight up just not that good. It's almost like it's bad, just because you have to find another medium to understand the show. But luckily it's available on Freevee, right? Because it just plopped in a certain thing of content that you can easily watch it for free, luckily. So, let's go on into talking and going into spoilers about the, of course, spoiler time, spoiler time. It's about the time I'm going to spoil these episodes. Let's just go into spoilers. So, I'm going to go on and just explain Harry Dresden's origin story right out of the gate instead of stretching this whole thing out. So, Harry, of course, is to be afraid of the dark. And is to be this scared kid that all of a sudden Harry's closet is open one night and Harry is to think that there is some monster inside of it. And so we have Malcolm Dresden, who is to, of course, be Harry's father. That is to go on and do the usual, like, hey, I'll go into your closet, see if the monster's there, and no, nothing's there, Harry. So Malcolm finally goes on, and because of Harry being a very scared child, and we of course have Malcolm that was to tell Harry that's like, hey, there's no such thing as monsters, and Harry always had this thought in his brain of whether really his father was ever wrong or right about this. And so Harry goes to get this bracelet from his father, and it's to be called a shield bracelet that seems to protect him from everything. It seems that Malcolm was to have gotten this bracelet from Harry's mother, who had worn this bracelet until her death, where somehow this bracelet did not protect her. And honestly, within the pilot episode, you can easily figure out why, because Harry is to go on and have this bracelet getting ripped away from him. I'm like, wow, what a flimsy bracelet that is supposed to go on and protect Harry from everything. Maybe not everything, but we'll figure that out. So, Harry's to go on and eventually find that his father is to be this magician. And so Harry at one point is to see that his father is struggling with this act. And so Harry uses his shield bracelet to use this one thing that is on it to help his father have this golden ring float in the air, so people are to go, ooh, ah. So Malcolm is to be upset with Harry for using magic, and Harry's to go on and tell his father, it's like, hey, you were dying out there. And so still, like, we had Malcolm that was upset that Harry was going to use this bracelet. So it seems afterwards we have Harry's uncle that arrives, who is just in mourning way, and he is to try and tell Malcolm that Harry needs to go on and be trained to be a wizard, Harry, because it's about that time. And Malcolm is like, no, he's still a kid, he's not young enough, and so on and so forth. And supposedly we get told within the story that Harry had gone on and had to have killed his uncle Justin Morningway in defense because of what Justin was forcing Harry, I guess, to do with his wizard power. And so now that I've covered all of that, we have, of course, in the intro of this, we have Harry and we have Laura, who are in a bed together, and Laura seems to be a normal human girl, and so Laura's waking up realizing that she's going to be late for work, and so Laura is telling Harry to meet her at the diner, and Harry's like, will do. So Harry at some point goes on to meet up with this kid randomly who is to find out that Harry is to be this kind of wizard or this private eye that deals with supernatural things. And so we have this kid here whose name is actually Scott. And so Scott is to go on and give Dresden $5,000 to solve this case. And Dresden is like, no, I don't think I can take money from you, kid. Like, I don't like to take money from kids, and that just feels wrong. And Scott is like, but this thing is after me. I have to go on, and I need to, have this all solved. And Dresden's like, well, maybe I'll look into it, but you know what? I'm not going to go on, and I'm not going to take your money, kid. So Dresden goes on to eventually just make his way to meet with a girl named Melissa, who's to be this kind of medium, I guess. I don't know. They don't explain anything in this show, so we just have to assume or assess or whatever. And so Dresden is to ask Melissa, like, hey, can you go on and channel the White Council and see if there is some debt on this kid that that he isn't aware of? And so we have Melissa that goes on and rolls her eyes in the back and is like channeling whatever she's doing here. And she's like, nope, no debt, no nothing. And he's like, are you sure? And she's like, yeah, he's not even on a register or anything like that, showcasing that he has any kind of debt. So Harry's like, well, okay then. So Harry goes on to eventually meet up with, of course, Scott's mother, and is to just say, it's like, well, hey, have you ever like gone on to like take this kid to therapy or any other kind of like doctor or anything like that before you go on to to have him come to me? And we have Scott's mother who's like, well, yeah, we've seen them all, we've gone through it all, and nothing seems to be working, so now we're gonna have to come to you because there's no one else to go to here. So Harry's like, well, I guess we're gonna have to go on, and we're going to have to use magic to be able to now help this kid out. So we have Harry that just on a piece of paper, you can't even like put a painting of this thing on a wall somewhere. You can't like, I guess wherever this paper goes, this kid will be protected. Yeah, sure. So, because Harry is to have the same symbol on his shield bracelet, and so I guess that's like a protection spell thing. So, Harry gives this kid this paper and to say, hey kid, you're protected, and it ends up going into that direction. So, now Murphy is to have this very unusual case that eventually she has to look into Harry to help her understand what this could be. So, Lieutenant Connie Murphy is to go into a home that is to notice that this woman is to have lost her skin and is now somehow dead. And I guess that this woman had been some teacher, which didn't really understand who this character actually was. But then they end up helping you understand who this character actually is. So someone had gone on and stole this person's whole entire skin and run away with it. So Connie is to feel very uneased about this whole case, because Murphy is to go on and say here, it's like, well, hey, where is the trail of blood? How is it that this person completely unskinned her and then went on to put clothes on over this. Like, this doesn't make any sense. And so now Murphy has to go on to speak with Dresden and understand like what this could be, because this is a really unexplained case. So Murphy goes on to Harry Dresden and is to ask, it's like, well, hey, like, help me figure out what this could actually be and how could I maybe defeat it. And Harry goes on and says that this could really be a case of a Shupa Toten, and this is to be some Aztec Egyptian entity, and or Shupa Toten, and Murphy's like, what? Like, there is no way that some Egyptian guy has made his way over here. Like, come on, give me what this could really be. And Harry's like, well, that's the only thing that makes sense, because the only thing worse would be what would actually be a skinwalker, which Harry doesn't realize until it's too late. But also, Harry is want to talk to Murphy about trying to get his boot getting removed from off of his car, because Harry had left his car in the wrong place and his car had gotten booted. So Harry has asked Murphy to help him out to eventually waive these fees and tickets and whatever. And so eventually Harry is to be helped by Murphy to get this boot out. So we also, in this story, after we have Harry, who is to have Lauren leave, we have Harry meeting up with Bob, who Bob is to go on and be this ghostly entity that is to be taking all the time of the world to draw out this equation to try to perfect this doom bomb, which I guess is to be this boxed item that when you open it is to be this like supernatural bomb to take out any entity. So while Harry is talking to Bob, they end up bringing up Harry's backstory and bringing up about his uncle and bringing up about Harry's father, and eventually Harry is to want to create distance between him and Bob after going on and bringing that up. And when Bob meets up with Harry again, he realizes it. It's like, well, yeah, I know I opened up some old wounds of yours from before, but like, but eventually when Bob is to know of the story of Scott here, we have Bob that is wanting to tell Harry, it's like, well, hey, you should really go on and find out anything about this case, because it seems that there might be something legitimate here that you're just blowing off. Because Harry doesn't want to be a part of that world, but he seems to be consistently pushed into it. So we have Harry that now is to go on and investigate this case. So Harry then is to give Scott this little sigil, this little thing that he's to put on his door and everything like that. And so we have Scott at one night who is trying to hold tight to this symbol, as we have his mother taking the symbol to put some tape on this paper to put it back on Scott's door here. And so all of a sudden we have the head of the Raven clan, who is to show up here, but then is to also show up at Scott's school. And the head of the Raven clan is to go on and trying to collect Scott here, and he is successful at it. We also had before when Scott's teacher was to try and to meet up with Scott at his home, but it seems that when Scott was to have that piece of paper that was protecting him, the teacher could not enter this home as if she was unusually some vampire who could not proceed to get into the home. So Whitney Timmons ends up having to make up some excuse, who is to be Scott's teacher, for why she cannot go on into this home and ends up leaving. So we have Harry who makes his way back to Scott's place to find out he is missing. And so, come to find out, we, of course, now have Harry that is to ask Scott's mother. It's like, well, hey, like, I need to ask. It's like, do you have any, like, abilities or powers or something like that? I know this sounds weird, but I need to ask. And the mother, of course, is like, well, no. And so Harry's like, well, do you know, like, about his father? And she, of course, is like, no. So, really come to find out, Harry is to notice that there has been a number of ravens by this house as soon as Scott was to be brought from this house. So, come to find out, Harry is to realize that since Scott is adopted, he is to possibly try and figure out where this could really be, and to hope that there might be a way to track this thing that went and took Scott. And so, come to find out, Harry had this raven's feather in on him to say, like, okay, we might need to use some magic to try and figure out where to track this this Scott. So all of a sudden, when Harry is going to think to go on and do a location spell or something like that, all of a sudden Melissa comes in, and she is to go on and mention that she's working with this skinwalker, and that she is to be tearing down all these protective things from Harry's place, and then rip off Harry's shield bracelet, to then uncover that Melissa is to have been working for this skinwalker and had been skinned, for eventually now the skinwalker to walk into this place with this girl's skin and throw it onto the ground. And so now this skinwalker is torturing Harry for information, pounding into him, and wanting to know where the kid is, because both Bob and Harry thought that the skinwalker had him, but instead the Ravens had collected him. The Raven clan had collected him anyways. And I guess the Raven clan was to go on and try to protect this kid, where the skinwalker was to possibly do the opposite. So we have the skinwalker that is going on and looking at Bob and saying, like, man, you were powerful once before, but now, like, you're just a shadow of your former self. You're just this impotent character that is just here now. And, like, this character could not care less about anything anyways. So we finally have Bob, while Harry's being tortured, give in to the skinwalker to tell her to take this raven feather and be able to figure out where this kid is. And so the girl goes on to take the feather, and so Harry is asking Bob, it's like, well, how long do you think it'll take for this girl to go on and do this spell and probably find this kid? And Bob is like, well, it's probably going to take them an hour. So Harry's like, well, maybe we can speed this up somehow by figuring it out where she's going to head, as well as also wanting to get that Doom device, that Doom box. Um, I think it's the Doom box is what it's actually called, the Doom box, not Doom bomb, the Doom box. So we have Dresden that is to go on and talk to Murphy, and Murphy is to find out that the kid was adopted also while talking to Scott's mother. And Murphy ends up saying that I guess the location that this kid was adopted from was some church that had been abandoned a while ago. And Murphy's like, okay, so we know where to go. So Harry goes on to the church location to find this Raven clan with Scott, and they are giving him sundaes and whipped cream and all these things and taking good care of him. So when Harry makes to these Raven clan men, we have Harry that is going on and grabbing onto this Ravenclaw, or this head of the Raven clan, and eventually saying that like this kid needs to go on and be on its own because his mother loves him and she's going to protect him and take care of him. And for also some reason we find out that this kid has powers. We don't know what they are, we don't know how this kid has powers, but he does for some goofy reason. And so the Raven clan is to learn Harry's plan about the Doom box. And so the Raven clan member is to mention to Harry, it's like, well, that's only going to be a temporary solution. And Harry's like, well, it's good enough, because do you guys have a plan? No? Didn't think so. So the Skinwalker finally does arrive, and so instead of having Harry go on and obviously just chuck this Doom box and run away, no, Harry's to go on and say, like, well, hey, I'm going to go on and I'll trade you the kid for this Doom box for you to have this. And the Skinwalker seems so seduced by the power of this Doom box that she takes it, but then realizes that the Doom box is going off in her hands, and so she ends up seemingly disappearing. And so we have Harry who takes Scott and goes off to take the kid back to his home. And eventually that's how this episode ends up kind of ending out here. We also had Harry who writes off Laura off screen by some dialogue that he mentions that that Harry and Laura's relationship had immediately went south when I guess Harry had went on to bring Melissa into that diner and she was so unusual, and that Laura had witnessed this and was like, okay, I don't want to be hanging out with that weird guy. So with that said, that covers most of what happened with, of course, episode 1. Let me know in the comments below if there's something that I forgot about, because I'm sure that there probably is. So, moving on now into what is to be episode 2. Because, again, we had an episode 0. We did have one, but meh, like, it didn't really need to be a thing. You know what I'm saying? So now we go on into episode Dose. So for this episode, we have Harry, who is to have a thing of dialogue at the beginning of this episode, where he goes on to mention about him not wanting to put it out there that he is to be this, like, wizard supernatural guy. Because eventually a lot of people, like crazies and wackos and weirdos and whatever, will eventually make their way to him and waste his time. And really thinking about that, you go on and you see every, like, supernatural thing where they have that concern also. Even watching the movie Ghostbusters, where eventually Dana Barrett is to make her way to the Ghostbusters ghost house, or ghost busting firehouse, let's just say, to eventually have them put all kinds of like suction things to her face to diagnose that she is telling the truth. And she's like, well, why did I have to go through all of that? And Peter goes on and says, like, well, there's a bunch of nutballs and crazies that come off the street, and so like we can't always like believe everything that anyone is to say. So, but we can now take Dana for her word, so we'll go after whatever she is to need help with, and we'll figure it out, and we'll check out her place and hopefully figure out this case of terror dogs and Gozer and so on and so forth. Anyways, pushing on. So Harry within this episode is to go on and meet with Charles Harding, who seems to be having this thing come over him that he senses that someone is here within his place. And that person ends up being his daughter, who I guess is Lisa. So, at first, we have Harry, who is to maybe make an assumption that this may all be in Charles's head, and he wants to, like, understand how Charles feels when he gets these kind of moments. And so he ends up comparing it to like feeling like the stove is on. And so Harry's like, oh, okay. So Harry all of a sudden gets hit with this wave of this story that ends up being played out, where I guess this guy named Boone had gone on and tried to rob from this location before, and Lisa had been in the middle of that, and she had gotten shot by this man, and eventually, I guess, Lisa's father had gotten knocked out. So, Harry is to be going through this story, and he all of a sudden collapses on the floor. Charles is going like, hey, Harry, you okay? And Dresden's like, yeah, I'm fine. I can completely understand what you mean. And you're definitely, like, this isn't in your head. Like, there's something really going on here. So, this whole ghost story weirdly connects with some other thing going on. Because we not only have to have a ghost story, but then we also have to have some other goofy thing going on here. I'm like, okay, this makes no sense. So, we have Harry going on and wanting to look into the Boone case. Come to find out, Boone had died, and so Harry had went on to look at the evidence that is to somehow be connected to Boone's case after going on and talking to Murphy. So Dresden goes into the evidence place where he's meeting with this girl who is to be single and might be a girl that Harry is to be interested in. And so Harry goes on to eventually go through these items and is to see this broken Egyptian tablet, which is to really stick out like a sore thumb here. And this woman is to mention that this is to be the Egyptian tablet, the Lock of Anubis, as she couldn't even pronounce Anubis right. And so Harry is to mention, it's like, well, yeah, that's the Egypt god of the dead, and so there has to be something about this tablet, because that's the only thing that really sticks out here. So, come to find out, Harry is to now go on and find this man who is to be Edward Miller, who was to be the man who had gone on to kill Boone, because Boone did not die in the whole thieving moment with Harding and his daughter, no. Boone ended up getting killed by a guy named Edward Miller, who I guess they were to, again, be in a moment where Boone is stealing from Miller. Miller catches him, wrestles the gun from this guy, shoots him in the head, and before Miller kills this man, we have Boone who is to go on and press his hand on Miller's chest. And so what we end up seeing here is that Harry is to realize that Miller has this Egyptian tattoo on the back of his neck because Miller, after talking to Harry, is to go on and change his clothes because he has this other appointment. And Harry notices this neck tattoo. This Egyptian neck tattoo for some strange reason. So Harry is to look into this tattoo and is to find out that Boone didn't have this neck tattoo. But then when they end up finding another picture of Boone, they end up finding out that, yeah, like, same tattoo. So now Harry is looking in to Boone's history and kind of looking at all these things. And so while both Harding are kind of looking into this computer, they find out that there is to be this man called Lucas Sabin that was trying to buy the Egyptian tablet before, because I guess Harding is to be this kind of auctioneer, and so at some point there is a rule that you cannot go on and buy this tablet. And so I guess Boone was trying to steal the tablet instead of buying it. And so I guess that's what eventually led to Miller getting attacked the way he did, and so on and so forth. So we go on into this story, and so Harry goes on and meets with Luke Sabin, who was wanting to go on and try to buy this tablet, but he couldn't. And so Harry then is to find out everything about Sabin and his backstory. And then when Harry does go and re-meet up with Sabin again, he is to finally want to get information from this guy to say, like, hey, like, tell me the truth about this Egyptian tablet. Like, because when Miller is to finally swap bodies with someone else, because eventually when Murphy is to see the whole tattoo and see that Miller has the same, Murphy goes on and has to put a warrant out for Miller, and so she goes personally to go and retrieve Miller to question him about this case, and that all leads to finding out that Miller has Boone inside of him and has been playing this up all along. And so Boone then swaps bodies with Murphy, the detective, and tries to kill Harry, but Harry has the shield bracelet that has the bullets being attached to this bracelet. And so Harry's now going on and consistently having this voodoo doll to try to bring pain to Murphy, so that way hoping Boone will release himself from Murphy's body. And Bob is upset with Harry because it's like, well, hey, if you go down and you use this voodoo doll, like, you're going to upset the balance of magic, and people are thinking that you're going to be using bad magic or black magic. So, but Harry continues to use this voodoo doll anyways. to eventually weaken Murphy consistently. To the point of Harry now having a confrontation with Murphy. But so Sabin goes on and explains that Boone would have had to have touched the tablet, read from it, and then been able to save himself from certain death by going on and touching someone else on the chest to then go on and swap bodies with them. So we have Harry and Harding being back at this building, and Harry is trying to lure Boone, who is now inside Murphy, to come and get to him. So Murphy goes on and is to call for a trace and is to make her way to Harry's location. And Harry uses this voodoo doll to put Murphy in such pain that she drops to the ground. And when Harry finally is to make it to Murphy, and eventually Murphy gets back up and is to try to find the Egyptian tablet, to wonder where the tablet had really gone, come to find out somehow Harry had taped the tablet to his chest and had Murphy forcibly touch the tablet onto Dresden's chest to then have him be sucked out of Murphy's body, to then also having Lisa be there seeing Boone being pushed off to the afterlife. And now Lisa has this one last moment where she tells her father that she loves him, and then I guess goes off to her heaven, as she is to possibly deserve that. So we had Lisa, who is to scare this guy so much so to try to get this case resolved. And so Harry figures out a way to resolve this case. So really, that second episode kind of goes all over the gosh darn place, and there's a lot going on there. But we also had Murphy, who Boone, while Boone was inside of her, supposedly the plan was that this Las Vegas tycoon character that has like endless amount of money is to have supposedly been the next person that Murphy was going to eventually change into. And Harry was trying to stop that all from happening. And eventually Harry goes on and tells Boone / Murphy that this tycoon character is not going to be available for Boone Murphy to change into. And so eventually it just leaves possibly Murphy to want to go into switching up into Harry's body, because where else can he really go at this point? And so yeah, that's how these two episodes end up playing out. I think I'm going to go on and just try to get out of here. Let me know in the comments below if there's any massive things that I had forgotten about, because I'm sure that there is. And I kind of fast-tracked through a lot of the certain moments in episode 2. I will admit that. The whole Sabin stuff, where Harry is to go on and mention to Sabin, it's like, well, hey, like, you don't want Boone going on and like living the high life, and you like stuck in here in this prison with all these gentlemen around you, and like Boone is gonna go on and be with all these lovely ladies and all of that. Like, you don't want that for him, do you? So Sabin is to divulge what ends up happening with the tablet, and how Boone is to swap from body to body to body. So yeah, so with that said, that ends up covering most of these episodes. I'm going to go on and try to get out of here. so I can go on and review something else for the day, and then maybe call it a day because I went on and did 3 videos yesterday. So goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.